Good morning, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us all here today. Today's shiur should be le'ilu nishmas our dear friend Menachem ben Yisrael Yaakov, as well as my dear aunt Rivka bas Gavriel Tzvi, and for Zaidi, Reb Shmuel ben Yosef Dov HaKohen, and the B'schus l'refuah shalema b'karav Mishalom ben Sarachel, Miriam bas Sarah, and Yair Yeshia ben Chaya Atara. Today, we are on page 251 in the Art Scroll for those who are following along. And today we are talking about this second refutation, the second argument that we're going to make with this individual, with this person who is a solicitor of security deposits. A solicitor of security deposit is the person who tells Hashem, he said, when you ask him, I said, why aren't you learning Torah? Why aren't you davening? Why are you doing? He says, I don't have time. It's not that I don't want to. I love Hashem, but I gotta go to work. I have a meeting. I have to make this deal. He's constantly busy trying to make money to be able to support himself. And so you ask him, say, hey, friend, when will you take a step back? When will you put God first? When will you start learning a little bit, davening, doing more mitzvahs, and then because you put money aside or put the job, set it aside and do it later. He says his answer is that when I have enough money to live out my life and my wife's and my children's, my grandchildren's life, that's when I'm going to take out the time, I'm going to retire, and I'm going to have all this money in the bank account, I'll be able to sit and learn Torah all day. That's the response, and that's the solicitor of the security deposit. And so today, the second argument we make with this individual is like this. V'hasheni. And the second response, Shekol ha-mekabel mashka mechaveroi, that normally, when a person accepts a security deposit from his fellow, now again, we're going on the idea that we're comparing it to a merchant who sells goods and is taking a security deposit for an order from an individual. So, for anyone who accepts a security deposit from someone, yesh lo kifza ulevakashas techila, the security has a set amount and is a request has a limit. Now, what does that mean? When you come to my shop and you want to buy a $1,000 item and I might take a 25% deposit, I want $250, or I want it paid in full before I even make this custom order. So $1,000, right? If you're selling a house, you want a $25,000 deposit. Whatever it is, there's always a set amount, no matter what the product is or the service is, there is always a set amount that you are requesting from this individual as that deposit. Ach bal hadas hazois. But for one who is approached for the requesting a security from Hashem, the one who is going to Hashem and saying, hey Hashem, I need my money first before I can do your will, ain't kates levakashasai. There is no end to his request. How much are you asking Hashem for? So Hashem says, okay, no problem, I got you. How much do you need? $1 million? $2 million? $1 billion? What is that number? And so this individual doesn't have that response. Because this person, he really does not know what amount will be sufficient to support him. Why? And also support the members of his household with their necessary sustenance and additional things until their last day of earth. When you ask God and say, I want a deposit, because that's only then am I going to have enough time to sit and learn, because I know I'm going to be financially secure for the rest of my life, how much is that? And so, you at first you're like, okay, $2 million, you're not sure. How long are you going to live? You need $1 million a year. Okay, you're going to live another 80 years? Perfect. That's 80 million. What is that number? You don't know what that number is. In fact, even if he eventually has many times more funds than he needs, because let's say initially he tells Hashem, you know what, 10 mil, give me 10 mil, I'll put it into a Roth IRA, growing everything, I'm good with that. Right? He tells us, he cannot have peace of mind. Why? Because the end of life of all people of his household is concealed. He doesn't know. There's more people born into his family. His kids have a bunch of kids, and they build up a big mishpacha, and he wants to help everybody. And all of a sudden, this $10 million is dwindling down really, really quickly. And you're really not sure. You're like, I don't know. That $10 million is not enough. And the span of their days is thus unknown. So he can never be sure that he truly has enough money. This person, he does not know what expenses will arise later. He doesn't know if he's going to have a loss. Maybe he's going to have a property that's going to lose money. Maybe he's going to be sued for something, God forbid, and he's going to lose a bunch of money. Something might happen, and therefore from that 10 million that your initial request from God, now, 5 million already went away for losses in other businesses. So now you're back to a point where you're really not sure where you're at. Thus, he's being foolish and unrealistic in regard to what he's requesting as his security, because he has no limit and no set amount. It's impossible. It's impossible for a person to put a ceiling on how much money they need until the day they die. And again, this is a practical response that you're giving to this person. Not a high level, not spiritual, but practical. Layman's terms. Buddy, you want a security deposit from God until you, and only then you're going to start doing God's will? How much? You can't even answer that question. And because you can't answer that question, that itself should be proof alone that first, do God's will. And with time, you do your hishtadlus. We're going back to everything we've learned so far. You do your hishtadlus, you do everything. And everything will fall in line. Everything will fall in line exactly the way it's supposed to be for you. Don't worry about your kids. Don't worry about your grandkids. They're all going to be taken care of. They all are going to have what to learn from Shaar Habitachon. They're all going to have their own lives to deal with. And they're going to have their own hishtadlus in their days that they have to do. You need to start realizing that first you put God. God first. Money will follow. I promise you it will. And whether it means a lot or a little, that's up to Hashem anyway. And so even if you work so hard today, it doesn't mean that you're going to make extra money that's going to last you forever and ever. And if you are ordained to have so much money until the day you die, you're going to have it anyway. That's what we learned today. You don't have a right to ask God for security deposit because when God tells you how much, you don't even have an answer for him. That is the important lesson for today. Thank you, everyone, for joining us all here today, and I love you all.